Feedback provides the practitioner and learner with evidence about the current knowledge and skills development. Understanding the learner's progress and level of achievement enables the practitioner to make decisions about the next step to plan in the learning program. So, I am your instructor for today, and together with me are Mr. Banyo, Miss Ibay, Miss Gipulango, Miss Piscuela, and Miss Pustrado. And we are the Group 7, and we're about to discuss about the communicating and reporting of assessment data from alternative methods. But first, let's have our objective. So at the end of the chapter, the students can differentiate feedback and assessment, provide appropriate feedback based on alternative methods of assessment, and communicate learners' progress based on alternative methods of assessment. But first, what is assessment feedback? In order to provide proper feedback to learners and inform them about their progress, we need to know the techniques and how to give feedback and the guides that we need to use to determine the contents of our feedback. We are expected to consider this before we can practice giving feedback. So when we say assessment feedback, these are the feedback based on the result of the assessment. So in here, in order to provide proper feedback to learners and inform them about their progress, we need to know the techniques or the strategies and how to give feedback and the guide that we need to use to determine the contents of our feedback. So by means of giving this feedback, we have things to consider. First is the content of our feedback. And we're expected to consider this before we can practicing giving feedback. Of course, this assessment feedback could the impact on the way of our learners learn and how are they going to be motivated on the assessments given onto them. Next is feedback. It is the information given to learner or teacher about a learner's performance relative to learning goals or outcomes. So meaning to say, feedback, these are the outcome or these are the results of our assessment based on the learning goals or the outcomes that we want our children to achieve. It should aim toward and be capable of producing improvement in students' learning. Of course, feedback has an intent to improve our students' learning. It is an important part of the assessment process. It has a significant effect on students' learning and has been described as the most powerful single moderator that enhances achievement. Of course, feedback is the most powerful single moderator that enhances achievement. Next, the main objective of feedbacks are: first, justify to students how their marks or grade was derived. Of course, we should always remember as a student teacher that the grades and mark or the clarity of the grades and marks of our student of where it was derived is very important. At least they are empowered, they are clarified by the grades and the marks that they get based on the assessment that you are given in them. Identify and reward specific qualities in student work. So in here, according to the models of motivation by Jen Peters, that has been said based on the satisfaction of the students that extrinsic rewards or the constructive or the positive comments as the norms is very important in order to acknowledge the quality of the students' work, in order to acknowledge their ways of how they deliver or ways on how they have the scores or marks based on the assessment we given into them. It guides students in what steps to take to improve, motivate them to act on their assessment, and develop their capability to monitor, evaluate, and regulate their own learning. Of course, by means of having this feedback, we could now letting our students to monitor, to evaluate, and regulate their own learning. And also, it is a great way to guide our students on what steps to take to improve and to motivate them to act on their assessment. So in here, we are helping our students to be improved. We're learning our students to enhance their ways in order to get the learning outcomes or in order to have these achieved learning outcomes by to our students. Kindly give feedback while the assessed work is still fresh in the student's mind before students move on to subsequent tasks. Of course, in order to have the focus within our student, it is necessary that the timeliness of the feedback or it can be a constructive feedback for a positive feedback to our student is necessary if it is still fresh in our students' mind. Of course, it is about letting our students adapt and adjust on how are they going to look for ways to develop the ways of learning. Meaningful, it should target individual needs, be linked to a specific assessment criteria, and be received by students in time to benefit subsequent work. Of course, meaningful in a way that we are targeting the individual needs. We are linking to a specific assessment criteria and receiving the students in time to benefit subsequent work. Of course, it is meaningful because it captivates the interest of our students. Effective feedback, it guides students to adapt and adjust their learning strategies. Of course, by means of this feedback, we are guiding our students to adjust and adapt towards their learning strategies. By means of having this feedback, we could now have this consultation with our student based on what ways for them to adjust on the learning strategies. At least, it is not just only beneficial for the learners, but also for you as teacher, in which you could be able also to adapt and adjust teaching to accommodate to the student learning needs. It guides students to become independent, self-reflective learners, and better critics of their own work. So by means of this assessment feedback, we could now letting our students to be self-directed. We are not letting our students to be passive, but an active learner. Stimulates reflection, interaction, and dialogue about learning improvement. Is constructive so that students feel encouraged and motivated to improve, and has consequences so that it engages students by requiring them to attend to the feedback as a part of the assessment, and is efficient so that staff can manage it effectively. So in all, assessment feedback is very necessary for our students, not just only our students, but for us as teachers. An effective teacher knows how to deliver constructive feedback, or a feedback that will allow our students to hone their learnings or to look for some strategies in order for our students to be better on the task ahead.
Good day, everyone. So this is the continuation of Mr. Catalan's report. To benefit students, learning feedback needs to be constructive. So, as a student, you should be open-minded of constructive feedback. So, as well as highlighting the strength and weaknesses of a given piece of work, it should set out ways in which students can improve the work for the student. It encourages them to think critically about their work and to reflect on what they need to do to improve it. So, help them see their learning in new ways and gain increased satisfaction from it. Helps promote dialogue between staff and students.
So there are difference of assessment and feedback. So feedback and assessment are not the same. Assessment is the process of judging and deciding the amount, value, quality, or importance of something. On the other hand, feedback is information given on the amount. So there are difference of assessment and feedback. So feedback and assessment are not the same.
So I am Crisaliba Pipulango, and we are now going to discuss why is feedback a powerful means to help learners improve. So the following are the reasons of why feedback is considered as a powerful means to help learners improve. First is that feedback is a powerful means of helping the learners improve their academic performance. Effective feedback provides specific guidance on how to improve learning outcomes, and it enables the learners to think about the learning involved in the task and not just the activity of the completing the task. Second is that feedback is a specific means that allows the learners to determine which part of their performance needs improvement. So feedback can be directive and tell students where they went wrong, or facilitative and provide guidance on how to improve. Also, it encourages students to think critically about their work and to reflect on what they need to do to improve it. So third, feedback provides specific information to learners on what they need to do to revise or redo their tasks in a better way. The feedback content can be, first, the specific strategy to be used to perform the task. Second, the suggested procedure that needs to be undertaken by the learner. A direction to a learner where to find the answer. A challenge to the learner to think about the appropriate response. A clarification on some misconceptions of the learner. So correcting mistakes or reinforcing answers in the flow of learning helps on three fronts: to make learning autonomous, self-directed, and to better embed received information. So when someone experiences an obstacle in learning, such as choosing an incorrect answer, and they are presented with real-time feedback about why their choice was wrong, they are motivated to set higher goals for themselves and bridge the gap between their input and the goal to improve the performances. So this is also a way to satisfy a feeling of autonomy. And now let's move on to the next slide. So feedback is given every time students perform a task, whether it is a paper and pencil test or a performance task. So feedback is provided during or after the performance. So feedback during performance can be verbal or non-verbal. Verbal feedback can be written in a big signage like poster or a handy whiteboard, visible to the learners. So the purpose of the feedback in the process of learning is to improve a student's performance, not put a damper on it. So it is essential that the process of providing feedback is a positive or at least a neutral learning experience for the student. So negative feedback can discourage student effort and achievement. So instructors have the distinct responsibility to nurture a student's learning in a manner that a student does not leave the classroom feeling defeated. So next is that feedback after performance. So feedback after performance can also be given after the performance of the task. So it is appropriate when the learners are provided another opportunity to revise or show again the performance. And providing feedback means giving students an explanation of what they are doing correctly and incorrectly. With the focus of the feedback on what the student is doing right, it is most productive to a student's learning when they are provided with an explanation as to what is accurate and inaccurate about their work. So to make feedback powerful means to help learners improve. So the following can be considered. So first, feedback needs to be specific and concrete. And the following are illustrations of general and specific feedback. So in the general feedback, the essay is good. Note, the saying that the essay is good does not provide idea to the learner which part was good, and the learners or the learner might think that the essay is good in all aspects. So in the specific feedback, you started the paragraph in your essay with a topic sentence and supporting sentences were provided after. So this helps strengthen the point you want to make. And note, this feedback is specific and saying why the feedback is good based on the structure of the sentence in the paragraph. So another example, in the general feedback, we have the painting needs improvements. I can see any object. And note, this is a broad feedback because it does not say what specific part needs to be improved. So in the specific feedback, perhaps you may want to use other colors in your painting so that you can distinguish the object. So note, this feedback is specific and giving recommendation on what can be done about painting. So second, feedback needs to be based on the agreed criteria. The criteria will serve as a guide to provide feedback on the work. So for example, the criteria in writing a technical paper are as follows. So the parts are organized according to the guide questions. The ideas are well understood by the reader. The information included are accurate. And more than 5 references are used. So we have here the illustration that shows feedback not based on criteria and feedback based on criteria. So we have, there are grammatical errors in the paper. So for the feedback based on criteria, it should be check again the idea conveyed by the author in the journal because there are discrepancies on page 3 pertaining to the criteria on accuracy of information in the paper. So let's take another example. So for the feedback not based on criteria, so the heading needs to be in bold font. So it should be add one more reference to support further your claim on the benefits of using organic fertilizers on page 5 pertaining to the criteria on references.
So good day everyone, I am Monique Pustrado. So as part of the continuation, let's proceed to the number 3 on how to make feedback more powerful and how learners improve their work. So we have here a number 3. Feedback should provide recommendations or suggestions on how to improve performance. So we have here a table. So in bad feedback, I cannot hear your voice. While in the good feedback, make your voice louder. Next, we have, why are you looking at the ceiling while speaking? So in the good feedback, look at your classmates when you speak at front. Good feedback refers to positive feedback to amplify or magnify the change or output. the response effect is magnified so that it can occur much faster. So in this form of feedback, the output of the system is enhanced. Conversely, in negative feedback, the output is decreased or inhibited. So bad feedback, somehow negative feedback. So it refers to the process of receiving a stimulus and adjusting an output to regulate a standard work. So let's proceed. What are the different forms of feedback? So there are 3 areas to focus when giving feedback. These areas are feedback on the product or performance, on the procedure or process performed, and on the strategy in improving the work. So this section aims to give you practical advice on the various types of feedback and feed forward, including when it's not appropriate. So number 1, we have focus on the product or performance. So this kind of feedback describes how well the students or how well the performance was done. Examples of such feedback are: all the parts of the paper are complete, you have used up-to-date references on your paper, include a definition of the term based on the main author. Lastly, rephrase the findings stated by the author on page 19. So by this kind of feedback, you are able to motivate the members, provides direction, improves individual performance or product, and it encourages engagement. So feedback is crucial in education and some business terms to identify company goals and manage progress. So to be effective, feedback should be intentional, constructive, and engaging. By understanding the importance of feedback and learning the most effective techniques, you can improve the feedback process within your team. So in this section, we discuss the importance of giving feedback and tips to improve your feedback process. So the process of giving feedback, especially to the product or performance of the students, creates an open working relationship among the educator and the learners. So next we have the number 2, focus on the procedure. This kind of feedback focuses on a step-by-step process that needs to be done by the learner. Follow the guidelines stated in the workbook in conducting the experiment to get accurate results. So next is try a different procedure in solving the problem. Next, use more adjectives to describe the main character in your story. So providing details or steps with feedback can help learners to develop a clear understand. So you have to offer them a specific procedure or details about task. So feedback is a means of improvement. So it helps your learners or individuals to shape their actions to better meet the needs of a standard competency. Lastly, we have focus on the strategy to improve the work. Strategies refer to the different cognitive and metacognitive actions that the learner needs to think about in order to arrive at a better work or performance. So, in an instance, given the criteria on delivering a speech, which parts did you achieve well and provide an evidence? Next is use a different method to check if your answers are correct. There can be a lot of value in feedback when used properly. It helps people to grow, adapt, and become better versions of themselves. To familiarize yourself with when to use which types. So again, feedback provides a great opportunity to develop skills and identify areas you need to improve as a learner or as an educator or as a worker.
So the next topic is all about using portfolios to help learners. So one of the important roles of teacher is to communicate the progress of the learners based on the learning targets. So the progress of the learner is better communicated if there is a good documentation of their formative assessment. So the work that learners have produced can be collected and compiled into a portfolio. So portfolio is the visual representation of what the learners have achieved from their initial work to their improved work. So there are some tips in making portfolios a powerful vehicle in communicating learning progress and areas needing improvement. First, schedule a time slot to sit aside each child to show progress in learning. So, the teacher may focus on the first work to the present work for one learning target at a time. The teacher may need about 5 minutes with each learner to show evidences of attainment of each learning target. Number 2, let the learners reflect on each entry in the portfolio. So this can be guided when the teacher starts to ask questions pertaining to the learning strategy that they used. Number 3 is let the learners report their observation on the transition of one work to another. So in these tips, ask questions for the learners to describe and compare their previous work with their present work by pointing at the differences, things that are present and missing among the entries, and the changes that happen from one entry to another. The fourth one is ask the learners to reflect on the areas that need to be continued and improved for the succeeding work. So in this, make the learners commit to their future plan of strategy when engaging the same task. It also helps the students or the learners to focus on making specific and achievable plans. And lastly, the last tips is end the conversation with the learners with an encouragement and I believe that they can improve and they are capable of mastering the task. The next topic is all about how to organize meeting with parents. So assessment results are also communicated to parents. The parents are partners in the child's learning, and information about the academic standing of the child should be communicated with them. So they are needed to improve or provide further support in their learning. And also, assessment results are communicated through the process of parents and teachers conferences, or most commonly it called PTA or the Parents and Teachers Association. And organizing meeting with parents is very important because it helps them to be aware of what is his or her children or child do in the school. And also, they help them be informed of what are the performances or the achievements or the achievable they help them to be aware and be informed of the progress and achievements of their child in the school premises, and also for them to be knowledgeable enough of the status of their children during when they are in the school.
Good day everyone, I am Erican C. Banyo. So the following are guidelines that can be followed in conducting parents and teacher conference. So first, send a letter inviting parents for a meeting. So before tayo magpatawag ng meeting, we need to send a letter to the parents. Second, greet the parents in a positive tone. So kapag nagpatawag tayo ng meeting, we need to greet the parents in a good way. Third, let the parents talk. Avoid interrupting them while they say their concern. So, kapag tayo nagpapatawag ng meeting, hayaan nating ipalabas ng parents ang kanilang concern and don't interrupt their ideas. Fourth, when responding to parents' concern, you may want to test or clarify their ideas, report relevant incidents, or ask further question. So kapag yung parents nag-share ng kanilang ideas about their children, we need to ask or clarify their concern if totoo ba yung mga nangyayari. When reporting assessments result, avoid judging on the ability of the child, focus on the performance based on criteria. So kapag sinasabi sa parents yung assessment result ng kanilang mga anak, avoid judging their capabilities. We need also to focus the performance based on the criteria. So sixth, when describing the performance of the child, use words that are understandable to the parents. Avoid too technical terms, cannot be avoided. Explain the terms to the parents. So kapag sinasabi natin sa parents yung result ng kanilang anak, we need to use words na mas madali nila ito maintindihan. And if yung mga words na hindi masyado familiar sa kanila, we need to explain the terms para mas madali nila itong maintindihan. So lastly, commit to the parents a course of action that you can realistically do but do not guarantee a result. Some course of action would be to verify an incident, further check documents, and to try to ask the child again. Lastly, for the summary of this report, so feedback is information given to the learners or teacher about the learner's performance relative to learning goals or outcomes. It should aim towards and be capable of producing improvement in children's learning. It is given every time students perform a task, whether it is a paper and pencil test or performance test. It is also provided either during or after the performance. Areas to focus when giving feedback include feedback on the product or performance, on the procedure or process performed, and on the strategy in improving the work. For feedback to be powerful, it needs to be specific and concrete, based on the agreed criteria, and should provide recommendations or suggestions on how to improve performance. Thank you.